When the Eldar first rose from the bosom of the ground, nourished by the tears of Isha, the gods came to them and each offered them a gift. Asuryan, Lord of Lords, gave the Eldar wisdom that they would know themselves. Isha gave the Eldar love that they would know one another. Vol gave the Eldar artifice that they would make their dreams a reality. Leleath gave the Eldar joy and they would know happiness. Kurnus gave the Eldar desire that they would know prosperity. Morai Heg gave the Eldar foresight that they would know their place in the world. Kain gave the Eldar anger that they would protect what the gods had given them. The Eldari species is torn asunder, its once gloried empire fractured by a people blinded by arrogance, pride, and hubris. Subsisting on the scraps of our tattered legacy, the children of Asuryan seek a means to avert disaster, a linchpin with which to burden our folly, should a sliver of a chance for redemption be at hand. Yet until the Rana Dandra, the end of days, the Eldar follow paths of their own contrivance, distracting us from the horrors of the void. Our desperate attempts to salvage the nobility of our people, resting on the shoulders of the descendants of those who evaded the fall. For today, we shall elucidate the survivors of the great calamity, who took to the stars upon arcs seeking renewed purpose. The Craftworld Eldar, the Asuryani. To understand the decadence which befell the Eldar species, one must first look to the pantheon to which it gave praise. For the seed of our hubris was nurtured by the deities who failed in their charge to protect their children. The traditions of Eldari folklore still coursing deep within the blood of the children of the stars to this day. Untold verses, theatrical performances, and tales of their deeds act as a fulcrum to which the species molds its identity. Battling the Ingir during the War in Heaven, as the mortal children of both the Eldar and Necrontyr bled within their shadows, despite wounding the Nightbringer Azagarod by the hands of Asuryan, only his rearranging of the suns themselves would sunder the Catan leader, also known as Kalis Ra. Foremost of the pantheon, Asuryan, the Phoenix King and father of the Eldari, remained an impartial master of both his godly kinsmen and mortal subjects. His position as ancestor of all living things and the embodiment of the universe's bountiful psychic might, a heavy burden. Avatar of light and fire, who taught the Eldar people wisdom, as well as mastery of their nascent manipulations of immaterial energies. Such is the pedigree of this monumental force that all Eldar would adopt the title, the Children of Asuryan, following our devastating fall from grace. His bequeathment of psychic mastery, both the greatest gift and curse of the Eldari species. For every soul who mastered their powers, Asuryan grew stronger, and yet as a direct result, the fertility rates of the Eldar waned. Ancient farseers, such as that of Eldrad Ulfran, believing that should all the greatest of his creed gather to harness their powers together, the breaking of natural laws, no matter their constitution, could be broken through the power of Asuryan. Such was his awakening of the Whispering God, Ennead, a testament to such a theory. Some speculate that even the restoration of Asuryan himself may be possible. The founder of the Phoenix Lords, Azurman, honoring the memory of Asuryan as he donned his aspect to lead a new breed of warriors to fight in his name. Those who gaze upon the death mask of the hand of Asuryan are promised a swift death. Kain, the first brother of Asuryan, is known by all who bore his terrible presence as Kala Mensha, or the Bloody-Handed. The embodiment of war, murder, violence and conflict, emblematic of the searing avatars which to this day fight to defend the Craftworlds. Gia, the goddess consort of both Asuryan and Kain, this patron of the arts would lay the foundations for the species' traditions of history, recounted through dance, to which only the disciples of the Great Fool retain. Vol, the god of forges, the third of the Pantheon's great number and second brother of Asuryan, began the arts of bone singing as the quintessential avatar of craftsmanship and engineering. Builder of the Palace of Asuryan during the first age of the Eldari, this tireless artisan plied his trade creating weapons for Kain, repairing the needles of Morai Heg, maintaining the traps of Kurnus, and carving the instruments of Isha. The great mother of harvest and fertility, Isha, harried by sorrow and misfortune. Such was the anguish distilled within this maternal figure that her tears symbolize her grief felt for all her slain mortal children of the Eldar species. Her weeping coalescing into the spirit stones which would harbor her children's souls from damnation. Little would any know the suffering she would endure in the millennia which followed. Kegarak, the god of tricksters, known by his kindred as the Great Fool and Trickster of the Pantheon. Though none of his contemporaries would regard this irreverent being with respect commensurate to their own standing, in time, the deceptions of the Laughing God would prove to be instrumental in securing the rekindling of their own glories. Deceiving the schemer of the Catan, the outsider, Kasara Noga, into gorging on its own brethren in order to assimilate their power, each fragment of its beasted kin drove the being mad, with some speculating it to be the architect of the hive mind of the Great Devourer, though no evidence can prove this to be true. Dromlak, the Cosmic Serpent, a hybrid creature of both the psychic and material universes. This curator of every secret of both past and present sired myriad children, such as the Starweaver, Voidweaver, and Skyweaver, given freely to his stalwart friend, the Laughing God, who was permitted to ride upon his back as they roamed the stars in search of adventure. Its influence seeping into alien cultures, such as that of even the Blood Angels of Baal. This metaphor for death was born directly from the beliefs of mortals, and thus exists beyond the skeins of time and space. Kurnus, the god of hunting, the companion of Isha and father to the Eldari species. With Hound, Hawk, and myriad other trackers by his side, Kurnus imbibed the nascent Eldari with nourishment from the spoils of his game. Hoek, the pathfinder of the Webway, said to be one with the winding paths of this labyrinthine realm. All who stalk between stars retread paths that this deity adventured many millennia before many species had even spawned from their primordial soup of creation. The consort of Cain, Moray Heg, known by many as the Crone, due to her standing as the arbiter of death. This wizened being bears a skin pouch of runes, containing the fates of all living things, and casts the hour of their demise at her choosing. Manipulating her companion Cain to sever her own hand so that she may drink from her own vitae. The divine wisdom of her bloodline bolstered her insight as she drank, each of her fingers being forged into the infamous Crone swords to which the Inari would eventually seek. Instrumental in her involvement into transforming Cain into his aspect of a terrible banshee. The scions of the Howling Banshee Creed honor her deeds as they shriek battle cries to unnerve their enemies. Lastly of the major pantheon is that of Leleath the Maiden, the youngest of all the Eldar pantheon and daughter of Isha, who tends to the dreams and fortunes of the living. Leleath proving the catalyst which would ensure the death knell of her pantheon. Her dreams of Cain being torn apart by armies of mortal souls drove the god of murder into a fitful rage. His efforts to prevent such a fight, beginning a war against the Eldari. Isha weeping tears for the folly of prideful gods and their children who would suffer for their vanity. Upon hearing the wails of the mother of the children of the stars, Asurion created a barrier between themselves and their charges, the border between real space and the immaterium. Isha's woes now compounded, separated from her cherished children, alongside her husband, Kurnus the Hunter. The two beseeched Vor the blacksmith, seeking to fashion spirit stones from Isha's tears to vanguard their souls from harm. Upon learning of his kinsman's actions, Cain brought word to his brother Asurion, his rage at such news a match for his vengeful brother, as the Phoenix King commanded the Bloody-Handed to enact retribution against the trio of conspirators. Cain torturing Kurnus and Isha for their temerity to ignore the commandments of Asurion. For his involvement, Vol was forced to listen to the screams of Cain's victims beneath the burning pit wherein the fires of his forges drew heat. Seeking a means to emancipate his nephew and niece from their torment, Vol agreed to fashion 100 swords for the god of war, his deadline of a single year passing with but 99 complete. Attempting to fool Cain by producing a final blade fit for only the hands of mortals, Cain would believe such weapons to be acceptable for his uses, and thus released Kurnus and Isha from their imprisonment. Fleeing from the domains of Asurion alongside their uncle, Cain learned of Vol's deception as his rage once more stoked as he set forth to achieve vengeance, beginning the second true war in heaven, which is not to be confused with that of the battle between the Eldar and the star gods of the same name. Armies of Cain and Vol fought their disciples, bleeding grievously to decide the fate of the children of the stars, gods of the Pantheon joining the fray, as Asurion refused to intervene. Vol reforging the final sword of his debt to save his kinsman. The blade known as Anaris would prove a fitting weapon with which to face Cain. Yet Vorl was a master of forging, not battles, and thus was defeated by the Bloody-Handed. Shackling Vorl to his own anvil as punishment for his crimes against Asuryan, the great hawk, Falchu, took Anaris from the field of battle and delivered it to the hero of the mortal Eldari, Eldenesh of the Red Moon. Facing Cain upon First World, wielding the final sword of Vorl, his valiant defiance nonetheless failed to slay a god, as his blood drenched the hands of his foe. Asuryan proclaiming the war in heaven to be over, regardless, soon his pantheon would once again be ravaged by war. One which Vorl could have aided in by rallying the defenses of their domains, preventing their doom had he not been confined within his forges, far from the foe to come. The untested expanse of the empire of the Eldari people, of their dominion of the stars, was assured. The Necrons long dormant from their defeat of their own battle of the war in heaven, as their separation from the Pantheon ensured a lasting peace. Art, culture, and mastery of technology flourished as the foremost galactic power saw an end to starvation, war, and suffering, paving the way for a species at peace with their lot in life. Yet the Eldari had grown bored in their time of plenty, for no more worlds were needed to be conquered. The boundaries of ethical endeavor reached, and gaze of their gods no longer amusedly watching upon their paltry deeds. So it was that the Eldari began to stretch the bounds of righteous endeavor, their preening arrogance as masters of all they surveyed, blinding them to the dangers which lurked beyond the pale. Driven by a need to achieve perfection in all things as they began to experiment with the vices which for so long had eluded their grasp, with every decadent display of hedonism, a new force which would blight the stars grew, fit to bursting. Death was of no consequence for all who perished to the debauched acts of their kin, merely spilling peacefully into the tides of the Empyrean, reborn again from the power of the warp, having suffered temporarily for the entertainment of their kin. Many of the Eldari looked upon their kindred with disgust, crafting arcs to abandon them to their acts of terrible debauchery, for following the maiden voyages of such craft worlds, disaster finally struck. The birth scream of She-Who Firsts, tearing a rend between the barrier of the Immaterium, constructed by Azuman. Untold billions perished within an instant, as the warp storm known by the present inhabitants of the galaxy as the Eye of Terror heralded the awakening of a terrible foe. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure and youngest entity of the ruinous powers of chaos, was born, its salacious appetite hungering for the souls of the peoples who had fed its sudden ascension. The indulgences of those gifted with rebirth, power, and mastery of the galaxy, fueling this ravenous cancer upon the stars forever, damning the Eldari to a slow extinction. Only through offering of the pain of others to its majesty, or the safe harbor of Isha's spirit stones, would the children of Asuryan survive. Gods of the Eldari pantheon, including the Phoenix King, were consumed by the Lord of Excess, the cunning trickster god Kegarak, fragments of ill-tempered Cain, and the poor maiden Isha, the only ones to escape its malice. For while the first fool found salvation within the bosom of the webway, so too did the so-called dark kin of the Eldari, the descendants of the pleasure cults, establishing a home within the port city of Komorra. Exodite pilgrims seeking to escape the clutches of Sylan Fresh tilled the land of pristine maiden worlds, far from the allure of the Ocularis Terribus. Yet among the orphans of Asuryan, those within the Wraithbone arcs sought introspection to decide their fate. Already championing independence and the traits of self-reliance, the Craftworld Eldari sought spiritual emancipation from their great foe, establishing myriad paths to pursue in order to stave off the call of hedonistic delights. Having already proven capable of surviving away from the core of their empire's domains for as many as 3 to 4 millennia prior to the birth of She-Who Firsts, the Craftworlds proved capable of feeding, housing, and cultivating new generations. By no means ignorant to the plight they faced, the Craftworlders nonetheless saw a chance to redeem the sanctity of their people, salvaging all survivors of the fall they could from beleaguered outposts of their broken empire. Though many Craftworlds would slowly dwindle until drifting into the void as little more than empty husks of their species' former glory, many now act as the last bastions of the Eldari species. Each Craftworld connected to the webway using gateways tethered to its winding pathways, Each arc bridges the gap between their distance to each other, and various territories which remain colonized by the Eldar. Yet with the passage of time, many maps which help navigate the tunnels of the webway have been lost. The passage of each generation atrophying the collective knowledge of the labyrinthine dimension as contact ceased with their allies. The bone singers of each craftworld adding to the mass of their home over the course of millennia. Many arcs of the Eldar have grown 10, if not 100-fold in scale, to accommodate their growing populations. Sheltering biosystems, urban housing zones, breathable atmospheres, and wildlife within their embrace, these marvels of the sundered glories of the children of Asuryan are the envy of all who witness their amenities. Yet as war ravages the galaxy, so too do the craftworlds suffer, for many of their compartments now rest empty of the citizens who once busied themselves within its streets and housing, its inhabitants preferring to stay close to their kin for safety rather than spread through these vacant ghost towns. Protected by vast fleets capable of combating the most grievous threats unleashed amongst the void, such slow-moving behemoths require plentiful defenses, robbed as they are of mobility. Containing guardian militias, as well as the aspect shrines of Khaine to defend themselves when called to war, no craftworld is complete without an avatar of the Bloody-Handed resting dormant within his throne room until the call of battle beckons. Trading with Exodites, fellow craftworlds, and even alien species on occasion to keep their supplies well stocked, these mobile civilizations of divergent creeds and beliefs must form alliances of tenuous coexistence to stave off annihilation. Such Exodites regularly disparaged by the Dark Eldar and even members of the craftworlds as backwater Philistines. Regardless of the aspersions of their kin, these pre-industrial settlers are content with their lot should the ravages of war not despoil their maiden worlds. Taming beasts of burden, such as megadons, to aid in their harvesting of crops as they nomadically roam from settlement to settlement. Though few among the craftworlds would ever dream of discarding the fineries of their living standards, for some, the call to rural pastures is enticing. Often seeing their Dragon Knight warriors as a romanticized calling to return to the old ways as herdsmen and agriculturalists. Though the safety provided by their planet's world spirit may vanguard their souls from torment, no guarantee of vast armies to protect their domains is enough to sway those from abandoning the safety of the craftworlds. Now accounting for the vast majority of what remains of the long-ravaged Eldar, every craftworld lost is a great wound inflicted upon the species. Their position as the authority on technology, culture, and industry unmistakable for even the dark kin of the Drukhari. Aiding one another, should plights of foreboding doom present themselves, these last vestiges of the dwindling Asuryani are too precious to allow to become kindling for the burgeoning inferno of chaos. For to lose the craftworlds shall surely presage the end of the species entire. Each craftworld of varying repute within Eldar circles, though all would proclaim themselves to be the vanguard of their species' last hope for redemption, each in turn offers unique skills to aid in their shared emancipation. Craftworld Alatok serving as the frontiersmen of the children of Asuryan. These explorers of the Ultima Segmentum keep a watchful eye for signs of sadism and obsession within the fold of their civilization. A bulwark against the tides of chaos, emblematic by their symbol of the Sword of Vol bisecting the red moon of Eldanesh. Their extensive use of rangers allows for unparalleled long-range ambushes to smite their foes. Quite possibly the strictest craftworld in their people's adherence to the Asuryani path and its traditions. Such is the respect for such measures felt by its people that even their aloof outcasts always return promptly during their craftworld's time of need. Clad in blue and yellow panoplies, exemplifying the defiance and determination of their people, their repelling of an imperial invasion by the forces of the Astra Militarum and Sons of Auror chapter of Space Marines has cost them dearly. Craftworld Biel-Tan, by far the most martial of all Eldar creeds. These warriors seek to renew the Eldari Empire through conquest by eliminating junior races who have usurped their fiefdoms of yore. Championing the path of the warrior as the fundamental way of life for their people, all citizens of age shall complete the way of the warrior as their first journey to best prepare them for the predations of a pitiless galaxy. Honorable combatants who believe that death in combat is the greatest sacrifice which can be made for their people. Their Chamber of Heroes houses untold spirit stones which are consulted during times of strife by their runeseers. Assembling war hosts known as Bazakain, Sword Winds, or Tempest Blades, These swift combatants ambush their enemies, supported by wave serpents and Falcon grav tank armored contingents. Targeting those who despoil Maiden Worlds as a priority, these stalwart allies of the Exodites bear a fervent hatred of orcs, specifically due to their wanton acts of destruction and wasteful harrying of life. Clad in green and white panoplies, mimicking the deadly embrace of nature, their rune of rebirth, or Rebirth of Ancient Days, emphasizes their mission to preserve their allies as they roam the Segmentum Tempestus. Craftworld Iyanden, once reputed as among the largest and most prosperous of all arcs of the Asuryani, their tenets that the survivors of the Fall had done so by virtue of their righteous intent, fans the flames of this dutiful creed. Experts of the arts of harnessing spirit stones as a means to focus the will of the dead, their modified infinity circuit acts as a conduit of their slain kin to impart wisdom to those among the living, noticeably blunting the rapacity of Slaanesh in its efforts to consume the souls of Iyanden. Though these righteous souls willingly shared their findings with their fellows and beseeched them to take the fight to the great enemy, many of their calls to arms were spurned. While some such as Alatok and Ulfwë proclaimed their efforts to be of more importance to pursue, other craftworlds would not risk what little they had to stave off the forces of chaos, decisions which would prove only to forestall great dooms from befalling their own domains. Craftworld Biel-Tan, the only allies to answer the proactive call of Iyanden. For millennia, these steadfast comrades fought the shifting tides of darkness, driving their foes into the outer rim of galactic space from the west as Iyanden secured the east. Yet with the arrival of the Great Devourer to the galactic stage of combat, Iyanden and Biel-Tan would be torn asunder. Their underestimation of the threat posed by the Tyranids proving costly. Beset by Hive Fleet Kraken during 992.M41, Iyanden's losses now dwindle its might down to a fifth of its former glories. The desolate craftworld now harboring more dead than living, as their returned prince, Uriel, attempts to steer their course for pastures new. Relying heavily on the Wraith constructs, which never lack for hosts, their combat made against the Tau Empire of the Segmentum Ultima, alongside that of craftworld Alatok, must also contend with the domains of Ultramar and the countless armies of Space Marine chapters surrounding their domains. Clad in gold and blue panoplies, bearing the symbol of the Flame of Asurion proudly, this rune of the light in the darkness emphasizes their hope for the Eldar species, resolved as they are to confront the great enemy in hopes of a brighter future. Craftworld Saimhan, devoted to the cosmic serpent Dromlak, assemble wild hosts comprised almost exclusively of jet bikes and other aerial transports to unleash their fury. Masters of aerial combat who rely on Wraith Lords and Dark Reaper aspect warriors only sparingly. Their traditions of enshrining chiefs to lead their nobility into battle rely upon family names derived from acts of warfare. Their seers, peculiarly not treated as leaders among their people, but rather acting in a supporting role of counsel. The pride of this hot-blooded craftworld has often incited rivalries between their peers. Clad in scarlet-red panoplies, adorned with serpentine runes drawn from Eldar myth, these seekers of the quest for enlightenment roam the Segmentum Pacificus, striking fast before withdrawing in imitation of the deity who roam between the physical and material realms. Craftworld Ulfwë, by far the most dangerous of all craftworlds. These peculiar souls have remained trapped within the embrace of the Eye of Terror since the day it first blighted the stars. Lacking in aspect warriors to defend its domains, the Black Guardians of Ulfwë specialize in combating the thralls of chaos in their stead. The craftworld's proximity to such a bastion of the ruinous powers providing ample training for these grim warriors. Home to the most gifted psykers in the known galaxy, also by virtue of their closeness to the Ocularis Terribus, these sentinels of the death stain of their species' downfall contain its dreadful spawn from ravaging the galaxy, forewarned by portents of their future actions. Acting purely in the self-interest of their crestfallen species, the Scions of Ulfwë allow for untold miseries to befall other races, should their own people be unmolested. Their infamous Farseer, Eldrad Ulfran, always orchestrating great schemes to forestall their ruin. Their craftworld benefiting from an excess of warlocks, who encapsulate the pinnacle of psychic prowess within the material realm. Their Seer Council monitors kindred craftworlds for signs of impending threats, and dispatch emissaries to warn those beyond their psychic means of communication. Clad in black and bone panoplies, belying their morose circumstance and outlook on life, their rune of the Eye of Isha weeps a single tear for the loss of their people and their own pantheon of gods. Last of the great craftworlds is the Black Library of Chaos, the largest repository of knowledge of the collective Eldari species. Its vaunted archive contains parchments, which if fallen into the wrong hands, further ruin shall befall the domains of the Eldar species. Documents pertaining to the origins of chaos, war fought against the Necrontyr, and even the genesis of life itself, detailed somewhere within its vast confines. Its protectors, the White Seers, aided by the Harlequins of Kegarak, prevent prying eyes for uncovering its fell secrets. Altanzar, first among the craftworlds of lesser repute. This ark long fought to be lost by their peers, survived the embrace of the Immaterium for years, until being rediscovered by their fell son, Malgan Ra. The resurgence of this fell craftworld, following the end of Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, thanks to the efforts of the Phoenix Lord of the Dark Reapers, doing little to inspire hope within the broader Eldari civilization. Regardless, Altanzar's freedom from multi-millennia of imprisonment can only be a boon for the Eldar species. Forever changed from their time spent within the roiling tides of the warp, Altanzar, though missing for almost a decamillennia, now returns by the side of their Grim Reaper, clad in deep red and black panoplies. Their rune, the Broken Chain, symbolizing Kurnus and Isha's escape from bondage, and the freeing of Vol from his anvil. Craftworld Ilkaif, also within reach of the domains of the Eye of Terror, wages a constant war against chaos. Their talented Bonesinger Kada, effective even within the midst of battle, as they construct defenses and portals. Allying with the denizens of Komora, and even the Imperium, should they join their attacks made against chaos. These Eldar clad in green and purple panoplies honor the slain hero, Eldanesh, as their rune, the Helm of Eldanesh, reminds them of the cost of his sacrifice. Craftworld Yggdrasil, run by a matriarchal hierarchy. Many shrines devoted to the Howling Banshee's creed produce warriors aplenty for their army. Devotees of the Crone goddess, Morai Heg, seeking to unearth the secrets hidden beneath the surface of the many Crone worlds which litter the galaxy. Though their homeworld of origin would be lost during the fall, the Yggdrasili hunt for the tears of Isha and ancient doomsday technologies. Clad in panoplies of blue and white as they roam the expanse of the Segmentum Pacificus, their rune of the Wisdom of Pain, or Hand of Heg, illustrates the Crone goddess's sacrifice in efforts to drink from the wisdom contained within her own blood. Craftworld Kalor, preferring to remain isolated from their peers. These pilgrims who ventured to the edge of the known galaxy have not been seen for millennia, with even the Harlequins of Kegarak unable to maintain contact or records of their deeds. Returning to the Segmentum Obscurus, passing through the Calixus sector to veer within reach of the Eye of Terror once every millennia. These souls clad in red and yellow panoplies now roam the Coronus Expanse, aiding the plight of the Corsairs of the Twilight Swords. Upholding the myth that a lost daughter of the Eldar gods, Evelyn, was concealed from Asurion, the Phoenix King, before the daughters of Isha were cast from the Pantheon. Her reincarnated form is said to live within the people of Kalor, only to perish before reaching maturity. Craftworld Lugganath has earned a reputation as little more than corsairs seeking to pillage the galaxy for trinkets. They're close allies of the Harlequins, endeavoring to aid their escape from the galaxy and begin a new kingdom of their own within the Webway realm. Opposed to the Drukhari inhabitants of Komora, who imperiled their dreams of dominion of the labyrinthine dimension. These souls clad in orange and black panoplies, located within the Segmentum Obscurus, adopt the rune of the Black Sun, which references their species' ever-dimming light. The world of Mimera, situated within the outer frontier during the fall, never had their ancestors witnessed the depravity of the pleasure cults, which caused the birth of Slaanesh, and thus were not forewarned of their descent into their same depravities. The wisest Mimerans constructing a craftworld of the same name to escape the sins of their kindred. Half the population would board such an ark as they departed seeking to abstain from corruption. Beset by numerous orc clans during their voyage, Craftworld Mimera lost hundreds of thousands during the resultant conflicts. The aid of the Phoenix Lord, Irilith, saving their people as he established shrines of the Shadow Spectres to train new warriors to defend themselves. Venturing forth to combat a threat which would imperil Craftworld Mimera, its people, though saved from their doom by the Craftworld, concealed their presence using advanced holographic technologies until discovering their slain savior's armor upon the world of Batalis Free. Fighting beside Craftworld Alatok as they retrieved the Phoenix armor, giving new life to Irilith. The scions of the Shadow Spectres, clad in teal and blue panoplies, wear the rune of the Cursing Eye, derived from Asurion's deadly gaze, which promises to kill his enemies the instant they draw his ire. Last of the known craftworlds is that of Imlok, a people of brilliant artisans, whose creations of war tower over even the tallest of Gargants and titans of the Imperium of Man. Harboring an arcane engine capable of destroying entire continents within mere hours, these guardians of great destruction march onto war clad in grey and red panoplies as they patrol the Segmentum Obscurus. Their rune, known as the Crucible of Souls, symbolizing Vol's forge which saw to the creation of weapons of the purest Wraithsteel, the location which saw to the creation of the 99-1 swords of Vol, emphasizes their notion that the Eldar's fate rests in their hands to create. To maintain sanity under the oppressive law of She Who Firsts, each Asuriyani must embark upon a path to ensure their spiritual well-being and to contribute worthwhile deeds which shall aid their community. First is the path of the artisan, a calling which promises to broaden one's pursuit of aesthetic beauty and cultural enrichment, further branching into the path of the poet, sculptor, and other schools of creativity. The path of awakening tests the minds of its disciples as they scrutinize the world which surrounds them. Their observation of seemingly innocuous events, often used to ready those who wish to embark upon the path of the artisan, to appreciate the beauty of nature. The path of the Bone Singer, an invaluable venture due to the constant need of craftworld infrastructure to be repaired, rebuilt, and renovated. These architects of Wraithbone manipulate such materials using tools known as Isifra Kasra to hone their psychic sculpting abilities. The path of the Celebrant, a means to forge alliances, venerate past glories, and commemorate special occasions. Alongside those of the path of the Chronicler, new deeds are recorded to survive for future generations to enjoy. The path of Command, also known as the path of the Leader, training already proven military leaders of crucial strategies and battle doctrine. Eldar who master this path are regarded as autarchs and lead the armies of the Eldar into battle. Those of the path of the Cultivator, responsible for caring for children, as well as protecting creatures unable to protect themselves. The path of the Diplomat, by contrast, fosters diplomatic communications between craftworlds and even interstellar species. The path of the Dreamer, providing meditative trances, which allow mastery of lucid dreaming, free from the temptations of She Who Firsts. These introspective souls are accompanied by Dream Watchers to make sure their slumber does not veer into dangerous territories. The path of Grief, also known as the path of the Mourner, devoted to lamenting the dead on behalf of others of the society. Their acts of remembrance and funereal rites lay to rest lost souls without inviting the appetite of Slaanesh from feasting on such emotional trauma. The path of the Healer, enriching its followers with the means to heal the greatest wounds, both of physical and spiritual nature. Those of the path of the Mariner, also known as the path of the Steersman, crew the vessels of their craftworld's fleet, learning how best to maneuver such graceful voidcraft. The path of the Outcast, reserved for those who wish not to follow the more conventional roads, which a restless Eldar abhors to follow. This dangerous alternative to safer paths within Eldar society is a fitting call for rebels and rogues. The closest one can come to the path of damnation, free as they are from direct oversight of authorities and the protections they provide. Whether inexperienced reprobates or disgraced exiles, the creed of the Outcast Rangers does not discriminate who joins their ranks. Technically, those of the path of wandering do not follow a set routine, for one cannot adhere to strictures free of constraint. Rangers without a craftworld, known as Escher, walking the path eternal as pathfinders, whilst others shall return to their home with time, or even become corsairs. Such raiders eking out an existence with no thought for their estranged craftworld kinsmen. Such mavericks do on occasion return to their home to aid against threats of monumental scale, yet far more likely are their capricious endeavors merely an enticement to fall to the path of damnation. The path of the Player, devoted to bringing life to myths and legends of yore through musical verse. Those who follow the path of the Savant study bountiful scientific knowledge, whilst those of the path of service dedicate their journey to tending to the needs of others, performing menial tasks, and sharing acts of empathy. The path of the Seer, also known as the path of the Witch, not taken lightly due to its treacherous pitfalls. The journey to become a warlock of the Eldar is fraught with peril, committed by the ruinous powers. Each Asuriyani capable of becoming a seer, due to their innate psychic talent. Many are unable to develop their powers to commensurate levels worthy of transcending to more specialized ranks of their creed. While some lesser seers pursue minor divinations of future events, more powerful pupils, all who must have trodden the path of the warrior, are promoted to the rank of warlocks. Their ability to cast energies from their fingertips in destructive barrages of lightning and other forces, useful in battle. Experienced warlocks proven to have an affinity with handling wraith constructs are assigned the rank of Spirit Seer. Their retrieval and handling of spirit stones, crucial as they commune with the dead and lead them on the march to war. Mastering the art of wielding force weapons as their crude talents for witchcraft grow, only Farseers exceed the rank of warlocks, and once chosen are committed never to tread another path. Their fate to one day see their forms turn to that of a crystal seer, their psychic affliction cannot be prevented, only forestalled, as those coated from head to toe in crystals must depart for the Dome of Crystal Seers, connecting to their Craftworld's infinity circuit, ready to become one with its psychoconductive circuitry. Last is the Path of the Warrior, a calling wherein most Eldar shall one day serve due to the encroaching tides of evil which constantly beset their domains. Each shrine devoted to a specific aspect of the Phoenix Lords who raised them. Phoenix Lord Azamun, founding the first of the Aspect Shrines. These warrior cults led by an exarch in service to the god of murder, Kayla Mensha Kane, follow the tenets laid down by their respective Phoenix Lord. Every exarch cursed to remain upon the path of the warrior, having forfeit their soul to the bloody-handed god. Though many of these experts of battle shall fall in time, others are sacrificed to fuel their Craftworld's avatar of Cain in their time of need. Wearing ornate suits of armor, entombed within a shrine to which they lead, such panoplies adorned with numerous spirit stones house within them the collective minds of their prior bearers, further galvanizing the expertise of these incredible warriors. The Dire Avengers form most of the Aspect Shrines, as the followers of the first Phoenix, Azamun. These experts of short-range combat, clad in lightweight blue and white armor, charge into battle armed with shuriken catapults, dire swords, and shimmer shields. Acceding to the teachings of the Hand of Azure, as balanced soldiers who lack for no tactic nor strategy, these elite warriors comprise of squads of 5 to 10, fire volleys onto enemy positions, before following their barrages with lightning-fast melee charges. Dark Reapers, representing the destroyer aspect of Cain, as taught to them by the Phoenix Lord, Malgun Ra, slowly march onto war in heavy armor of grim midnight black, firing long-range Reaper launcher missiles to create devastating, armor-piercing salvos. Accurate, no matter their range, these lumbering tides of death incarnate interface with their weapons using their rangefinders, allowing them to see from the muzzle of their launchers to enact pinpoint accuracy honed through years of training. Operating within squads of 3 to 5 men, often positioned behind lines of pre-deployed Asuryani battle lines, these Scions of the Harvester of Souls send shivers down the spines of their enemies and allies alike. Eagle pilots, adhering to the ethos of Phoenix Lord Amon Karakht, to swoop from the heavens before unleashing devastation onto the enemy below. These superlative aerial aces push their Nightwing interceptors and Phoenix Strike aircraft to their limit as they revel in their feats of daring maneuvers. The Crimson Hunters, few in number due to their seeming lack of a Phoenix Lord and minimal shrines. When such sleek aerial fighters are seen in battle, none can question their mastery of dogfighting and aeronautics. Embarking within Nightshade interceptors from their shrines, which resemble tunneled atriums at the heart of their respective Craftworld's archipelagos, their Exarch crafts are upgraded with heavier variants of twin star cannons and bright lances to better devastate their foes. The Fire Dragons, led by the intimidating Burning Lance, Fugan, these anti-tank warfare experts fight within the thrill of close-range combat, firing fusion guns, melter bombs, and grenade launchers, fitted directly into their suits of thick, fiery red and orange armor. Delighting in the destruction caused by their fury, complete annihilation is the only victory these warriors deem acceptable. Their armaments turning even the sturdiest of foes into molten slag, comprised as they are in squads of 5 to 10 men, typically deployed by Wave Serpents. The Howling Banshees, overwhelmingly fielding female warriors who carve their enemies into bloody red ribbons. These close-quarters melee combatants wield shuriken pistols and power weapons as they scream their war cry. Their shrieks amplified by their Banshee masks, which tune their piercing wail to eardrum-bursting levels. These disciples of Phoenix Lord Jain Zar display incredible feats of athleticism, clad as they are in eerie bone-white armor adorned with plumes of orange manes. Operating in squads of 5 to 10 warriors as they strike high-value targets. The cries of these assembled duelists hearken misery for the foes they shall face, as the sheer noise of their terror tactics alone can unnerve even the most capable of veterans. The Shadow Spectres, following the teachings of Phoenix Lord Irilith, specialize in stealth operations. Their targeting of heavily armored convoys using jetpacks, prism rifles, prism blasters, and ghost-like targeting matrices allows for unparalleled surgical strikes. Deploying in squads of 3 to 5 men, each clad in wraith-white panoplies draped with flowing blue robes, these patient hunters materialize seemingly from thin air, before once more eluding their prey as their ghost light covers their escape. The Shining Spears, trained in the methods of Phoenix Lord Drastanta, as they charge into the fray with the force of a great javelin. Upon gleaming jet bikes, these rapid assault jousters, unhindered by the land they roam, cut a sway through their enemies. Unleashing barrages of twin-link shuriken catapults and piercing lunges of their laser lances within squads of 3 to 5 warriors, these pilots clad in white and blue armor tear weak points into enemy lines for their kin to exploit. The striking Scorpions of Phoenix Lord Karandras, also specializing in close quarters combat, these emerald-clad duelists armed with chainswords, shuriken pistols, helmet-mounted mandiblasters, and scorpion claws infiltrate enemy positions before spattering their confines with gore. Each squad of 5 to 10 warriors benefiting with enhanced strength thanks to their exoskeleton suits. Even the might of a space marine can be matched by these durable combatants. The Swooping Hawks, mastering the disciplines of the Phoenix Lord, Baharoth. These aerial combatants soaring with jump packs adorned with wings of feathered plates are a blur of motion as they dart to and fro. Their lightweight panoplies of blue and grey, aiding their camouflage with the skies and clouds above. These avians of 5 to 10 man squads attack with las blasters and grenades to flush out entrenched infantry positions. Last of the Aspect Warriors are the Warp Spiders, led by the Phoenix Lord, Lycus. Their doctrine of striking, using tears in the warp projected by their jump generators, catching their foes unawares. Each 5 to 10 man squad, clad in dense red and black plating, fitted with warp shielding technology. These warriors armed with death spinners, power blades, shuriken weapons, and fusion guns risk enticement by the great enemy with every jump through the immaterium, and thus are distrusted by their peers. Yet a new calling reaches out to the scions of the Aspect Shrines. A new call to arms, not of the god of murder and war, but that of the Whispering God, Inayad. Revived in part by the efforts of Eldrad Ulfran and events of the Night of Revelations, its emissary, Ivrain the Daughter of Shades, promises the salvation of any soul who wishes to defect to the pledge of the Whisper. Many an Aspect warrior accepting such a bargain, having seen the avatar of the god of death firsthand. The Reborn grows exponentially as champions of countless shrines abandon their war mask of Cain in favor of Inayad's promise. For the old gods are slain, and only the Whisper provides a chance for redemption. For another chance to fight for the renewal of the Asuryani shall not be forthcoming, should the Whisper of the nascent Inari be ignored. When war calls, we all ought to answer. Would that it were not this way, but for our people to survive, we must all tread the darkest of paths. Yet I regret that many of our kin have grown to see such obligations not as a duty, but a joy. I do not love the blade for its form or its keen edge, but only for that which it defends. Must we pay for existence with our very souls? This has been a tale of the Eldari Empire, read by the Antiquarian. To seek a life of spiritual purity is a noble endeavor, for no shortcuts nor balms are provided, save for the enacting of its tenets and teachings. Many provide a path to follow, having learned it firsthand, yet most are ignorant of the fact that paths change, twist, and are worn away with the passage of time. Whatever path you seek to follow, be aware that the wisdom of tradition and inherited wisdom does not always hold true. Paths are newer formed, and many fail to recognize their emergence. So take courage in your heart should you embark upon a path never trodden. For whatever the fruits of your endeavor, you shall rest easy, knowing you have forged the path ahead for others to learn.